I told you not to worry.
Wait, what was that?
Delivering a dark and atmospheric horror that doesn't let you sleep at night. The film opens with the scenes of the lead character, Don Koch, who walks into his newly purchased house. Accompanied by his pet dog, Cooper, Don brings his tools to fix the house from the inside, before he settles down with his pregnant wife, Liz. Don was a very corrupt man who had been in trouble many times. Don was also unfaithful to Liz up until the pregnancy news break. Don is trying to become a better person now. Everyone says that, but does he mean it? Now that Don is inside his soon-to-be family house, he sets loose Cooper and lets him roam around the house. While Don fixes a giant burnt mark on the wall, Cooper feels someone's presence upstairs and squeals. Don starts piling up the unnecessary and broken stuff in the house and disposes it. After a few hours of work, Don's next-door neighbor, Ellie, shows up and checks up on him. After getting to know Ellie, Don goes back inside and sleeps. He wakes up to his wife's video call. What a nice way to start a morning. Don starts working on fixing the walls. He starts from the wall that had a giant burnt mark. He tears it down and fixes it with a cardboard cutout. He then begins tearing other walls, because all the walls seem pretty fragile. Another thing Don notices is that white goo drips out of all the sockets of the house. That is super suspicious. While tearing another wall down, Don finds some newspapers from 1909. He also discovers a lady's costume and a lady's wig, which also has a date from 1909 printed on it. Tired of fixing things, Don goes to a nearby restaurant to eat. When the manager finds out Don has newly moved, he gives him a warning and tells him the house is not safe for straight men, implying something had happened to the previous owners of the house. However, Don doesn't believe in supernatural activities and goes back home to sleep. That night, Don also feels the presence of someone but cannot find anybody. Try to put yourself in Don's place and imagine if that were to happen to you. The next morning, Don begins fixing the drains of the clogged sinks. While dealing with the dirty pipes, one of the pipes explodes on his face. The gunk covers Don's face. He steps out of the house to wash his face and finds an attractive woman named Sarah standing on the side. She tries to flirt with the shirtless Don, but it doesn't work out. With that body, who wouldn't? He goes back in and gets the sink job done. As Don spends days and nights, he starts experiencing paranormal activities, but ignores them every time. He comes home after a long-running day and heads to the shower. Instead of water, white goo that dripped often from the sockets starts squirting out of the shower and sticks to his face. Yikes. Imagine getting covered in slimy goo. Don still ignores the fact that some paranormal activities are happening. He cleans himself and starts working again. He paints the wall that had the giant burnt mark. Sarah shows up again and gets intimate with Don this time. Hence, proven once a cheater, always a cheater. That night of getting intimate with Sarah, Don hears a loud thud coming from upstairs. He runs up and witnesses that a ceiling from one of the rooms has fallen, revealing a secret attic and a balcony from where the whole house could be viewed. The dark attic is giving us shivery bones already. With one more problem to deal with, Don wakes up the next day and gets to work. That night, Sarah pays a visit again, but Don apologizes to her and tells her to end it before it begins, breaking her heart. When Don goes to sleep, he sees Sarah getting on top of him and transforming into a disgusting creature. Don wakes up from dead and finds himself in a weird state. Classic macho man Don once again ignores that there is something spooky about the house. He should just leave the house. The next morning, Don calls his friend Milo over for help. Milo and Don spend the day packing the ceiling. Sarah shows up again. This time Don gets a little threatening. He pushes her against the wall and tells her to stop showing up. Later, Don confesses his guilt to Milo. Knowing Don's cheating on his wife, Milo lashes out at him. Both snap at each other, which results in Don walking out of the house. Hurt, Milo starts working again. Suddenly, he's distracted by a voice coming from the basement. He goes down to see if everything's all right, but ends up dying. Sarah smacks his face with a hammer and knocks him out for life. To make things worse, Sarah is accompanied by the disgustingly ripped-open girl that Don encountered in his dreams the night before. Poor Milo was innocent. He did not deserve to die. Don comes home that night and assumes Milo has left in anger. He texts Milo and apologizes. Don gets an instant reply back from Milo, saying it's all good. We all know Milo died a horrible death. This only leaves us with the suspicion that Sarah has Milo's phone now. Don feels lonely, so he takes Liz on a video call. While talking, Liz sees someone pass behind Don and freaks out. Don also gets concerned. As soon as the sun comes out, Don goes out and buys security cameras. He sets them up in every room, but the cameras don't turn out to be a good help. On the night of the camera installments, Sarah sneaks into the house. She drags Cooper to the washing machine area. She throws him in the washing machine and turns it on. Don wakes up and finds Cooper's body, torn into shreds and pieces. At this point, it implies that someone is trying to warn Don to get the hell out. Don calls the cops and pitches in Sarah's name for killing his dog. Since the cops find no dirt on Sarah, they leave. Sarah, with the freakiest smile ever, shows up. Packed with rage, Don kills Sarah and throws her into the basement. After a few minutes, he realizes what he's done and freaks out. He goes back to his basement to check the body, but finds out that someone has dragged the body away from there. Don searches the whole house but is unable to locate the dead body. Left with no options, Don goes to the secret attic. He takes a drill and penetrates the walls. There he finds a doll and a handful of marbles. He also notices some hand paintings on the wall. We have a feeling that this might be the screwed-up girl's home. The film picks its pace as Don loses his mind and starts drilling all the walls of the house. On drilling the main wall of the hall, Don witnesses a beating heart that is bleeding. Another wall reveals an eye. On tearing down the third wall, he sees Milo's dead body. Don starts screaming in fright and regrets as things have gotten out of hand. Soon, the whole house starts to drip blood and white goo. Don gets an MNS from dead Milo's number, which has Sarah's photo, giving Don the middle finger and saying all actions have consequences. Don doesn't even get a minute to panic or cry over Milo's death, and Sarah's acquaintance comes out of the drawer. Her body's tied with ropes and her face has been completely wrecked. That lunatic throws a marble toward Don's feet. Strangely, the marble penetrates Don's ankle and starts crawling up to his leg. Hopeless, Don screams and starts to viciously cut his leg with a blade to hit the marble out. Don's body gets covered in blood as the lunatic penetrates a handful of marbles under Don's skin. With struggles to take the marbles out, Don dies. Don should have taken the red signals in the first place. Don's wife, Liz, shows up the next day to surprise him, but he is nowhere to be seen. Since Cooper's missing too, Liz assumes Don has taken Cooper out for a walk. Soon Liz hears a commotion from the basement and is forced to go down. To everyone's shock, Sarah meets up with Liz, fully functional and alive. What kind of God's creature is Sarah? Sarah assures that everything is fine and also introduces herself as the lady who is helping Don fix the house. The next-door neighbor, Ellie, shows up. Liz notices that Sarah has disappeared strangely. Ellie meets up and warns Liz to pack up and leave as the house doesn't have a nice reputation. Liz ignores it and goes back inside and refreshes herself. Liz finds a newspaper from 1902 which has tragic news printed about the house she's currently in. The news says that a girl who ran a brothel in the house has been brutally murdered. Liz tries to call Don, but his phone rings from inside the house. Liz is a little concerned but still waits for her husband to show up. That night, Liz finds men dressed up as locals from 1902 partying in her house. Poor Liz still believes that Don has set the party up. She goes inside and visits the balcony of the attic from where she gets a view of the full house. Along with a couple of other men, she witnesses Sarah, who is pleasing men by stripping her clothes off. A man in a very horrific eagle costume is seen hitting Sarah with weird copper ropes. In the attic, she finds a little girl drawing on the walls. The girl has a lot of marbles with her. This goes to show that the little girl is the rope-tied lunatic creature that killed Don with marbles. Liz starts to panic and starts going down the stairs. On the staircase, she finds Sarah. As Sarah begins telling her the tale, all the mysteries unveil themselves and everything starts making sense. Sarah reveals that she was a very famous prostitute in 1902 and ran a brothel in the house. For a minor inconvenience, the landlord murdered Sarah and disposed of her body on a railway track. He also tortured the little girl and killed her. That explains why her body is wrecked and ripped open from certain parts. With unfulfilled desires, Sarah and the little girl's spirit began haunting the place. Sarah tries to attack Liz, but she successfully runs away and locks herself up. There she finds Don, all cut up and bloody. Liz starts to scream and cry. It was Sarah's ghost that had shape-shifted into Don's dead body. This is giving goosebumps and cold sweat. She tells that all the men always took advantage of her and left her miserable. No one truly loved Sarah. Even Don took physical advances from her and left her. Just like her landlord, Sarah has killed all the men who have stepped foot in her home after her death in 1902. However, Sarah doesn't hurt Liz and lets her run away. Out of breath, Liz comes out of the house and finds Ellie outside, who knew everything. Liz yells at her for not telling her the true story. While making a valid point, Ellie reminds us that she did give a warning to Dawn and Liz both, but people never listen. Ellie's not wrong though. Liz then decides to take Ellie's help and find the little girl's rotten dead body and give it a proper burial to lift the cursed spirits in the house. They finally succeed and give the little girl's dead body a proper burial. This works out and the spirits find peace. In the final shot, we see Liz, who has birthed a baby girl in that house. As Liz turns away, marbles drop on the baby girl's bed, and we see a glimpse of Dawn's spirit, which has plastered a very evil smile on his face, suggesting that his body hasn't been found and buried yet. Here the film ends. First of all, we didn't know CM Punk was this good at acting. And secondly, the director of the film has done a great job with the cinematography. The horror aspect of the film made us feel like spiders were crawling up and down our spines. If you haven't experienced horror in a long time, we think Girl on the Third Floor is certainly the right film to watch. Thanks for watching another Essential Recap. Please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe.